Okay. Quick show of hands. How many of you have been debating for a while now? Okay.
Are MUNs counted as debate?
What? MUNs?
Yeah.
MUNs don't count as debate because they're very different. But then that gives you some public speaking experience, so that's fine. MUNs are very different. The kind of training that goes into MUNs is different. All right. Lower your hands. Thank you so much. Another question though. How many of you have some professional training, like have had some professional training for debates, like you've been taught by somebody? All right. Okay. So the rest of us are completely reliant on these sessions. All right. We're going to make them as inclusive as possible then. Fair. Uh, Thank you. Lower your hands. So I'm just going to share my screen. Give me 1 second. So today I am going to do a couple of things. The first one being explain the format better. What is a constructive speech? What is a reply speech? The second one being how can you make a good constructive speech? How would I do it if I were in your position? How do you do a reply speech? What not to do in a constructive speech? What not to do in a reply speech? So on and so forth. If you have any, okay. Another thing about this session is that there's very little that I have to say from my side about the format. It's a very simple format. Everybody will understand it in no time. How we can make this session fruitful then is through good, meaningful engagement with good questions, not questions on, hey, I'm not available on those days, these dates. Could you please change the day I'm going to do my qualifiers on? That will be later on the email ID through other processes. Ask relevant questions in chat with reference to whatever I'm teaching. All right. Um, cool. So sharing my screen now. All right, formally welcoming you all to day 2 of training for the senior category Indian Debating League. Today, I am going to start with this, which is a reiteration of the format. There is one constructive main positive matter speech for positive matter on prop and op. Prop starts the debate always in any given format. So it's going to be the case for this format as well. Prop speech, first speech, 3 minutes long, followed by op first speech, 3 minutes again, followed by prop reply speech, 3 minutes, followed by op reply, 3 minutes. Moving on. The most relevant question then is what is a constructive speech? This is relevant not only to the new debaters but also experienced debaters because the expectations from a constructive speech vary as per the format of which this constructive speech is. This means that even if you know the WSDC format or any other format that you are trained in by your trainer, or whoever you are being taught by, it's not necessary that the same rules are going to be followed for this. So for this format, you have to listen to what I'm saying in this training because afterwards we don't want the kind of argumentation where you say, hey, this is what my trainer said, or this is what the format says the constructive speech is supposed to do. Because every tournament comes with its own rules. You have to abide by those rules while you're in that tournament, and then you can unlearn them the moment you're out of the tournament and you've won it, or like not won it, but just participated in it. So the first thing about the constructive speech for this tournament is that it has to start with, just give me 1 second, there's somebody on the door. So the first speech in your, the first constructive speech that you have is always starting with a setup or a framing. And the major arguments are followed by that. Now, again, you have to make peace with like simple definition that I'm going to give because I'm catering to the new debaters as well. So the simplest way of understanding framing is this. Framing means setting up the debate. Now, what is a setup? Think about a novel, if you've ever read one, but even if you haven't, I bet you've read some short story when your English teachers put you at gunpoint. So when you start a novel, when there's a novel starting, or when there's a storybook starting, it would always start with like an introductory passage, or in fact introductory pages. This means that if there is this novel which you haven't read, what would it be? Okay, I'm sure you haven't read this. If there is a novel called Middlemarch, and this has a character called Dorothea, and I start writing this novel from with explain by explaining Dorothea got into a fight with Celia, and then I continue thereafter. Is this going to make sense to you, no, the novel, or not? Quickly, yes, no in the chat. This is not a juvenile question, it has relevance, so please respond. No. Okay, fair. Obviously not. It's not going to make sense to you because you don't know who Dorothea is. That's one problem. You also don't know who Celia is. That's another problem. But you also don't know what to make of this book. Like, where is this problem? Where does this problem exist? What is the locale of this uh book? Where is it set up? Because the setup also helps you understand a lot, right? When you know that this book is set up in 18th century England, then how you interpret these women is different. Because 18th century England had women who were not allowed to do much. They were not allowed to go work outside. They were not allowed to have property rights. They were not allowed to uh, be like at par with their like the male members of the family. So the context helps you understand the novel's characters. So in the absence of a context, you don't understand a novel. In the absence of the stakeholders of the novel, you don't understand it. In the absence of any explanation of who Dorothea is, you don't understand it. If Dorothea is a guy, if Dorothea is a man, then and let's just take some like gender neutral like name, right? For example, there's a lot of gender neutral names, so both girls and guys have those can have those names. So if it was such a name, you so knowing the gender of the person is important. Knowing their socioeconomic position is important. What if Dorothea is a privileged white woman? But what if Dorothea is not a privileged white woman? What if Dorothea is like the housemaid of a privileged white woman? It makes all the difference in how you're going to interpret this novel from here on, right? I think that's the same kind of thing that you need to do in debates as well. Consider this motion. This house uh, supports, this house regrets the narrative that parents are responsible for the wrongdoings of their children under the age of 18. Now, if you regret that parents are blamed, then you need to define parents. You need to define wrongdoings. You also need to define children. Although all of these things are intuitively understandable, children are people below the age of 18, fine. They don't have enough cognitive ability to make their own decision, also fine. Parents make decisions for you, all right. But the thing is that you can enrich your understanding of the motion by enriching the definition of these terms. So, for example, if you explain that, look, children are not just people who always listen to their parents, children also sometimes listen to the peers they are hanging out with. They also have alternative influence groups like teachers. That is why blaming the parents is not always the most active, feasible option, because the kind of access you have these days to social media, etc., literally connects you to the world. But it literally also equips you with the ability to go way beyond your parents' means and appreciate.
Stop holding your phone.
Chaitanya, you're unmuted voluntarily or unknowingly. So the thing then is that you need to define the terms. That's one bit of framing. The other framing, the other setup that you need to do is again the kind of the setup that you find in a novel. Dorothea is so and so woman in mid-century, mid-18th century England when the city of London is doing yada yada whatever. So you need to tell me, where is this debate happening? Now this debate, this house regrets blaming parents for their children's wrongdoing under the age of 18. Where do you think this debate is happening? What is the context of this debate? In the chat. One word answers I'm looking for. Where is this debate happening? So most of you don't have the answer, I'm assuming. That's why I don't have enough responses. Modern times, modern times, modern times, USA. Okay. Cool. Most of you are saying countries all over the world. Good, Agastya. England, why? No, okay, Eklavya, I think you're confusing Dorothy's example. Now I'm not talking about Dorothea. Anywhere. Monish, good response. Yes. See, this debate cannot happen only in India or only in America because parents exist everywhere. Children also exist everywhere, and wrongdoings by children also happen everywhere, which means that this debate is not happening in India or America, it's happening across the world. And the world, what does that look like then? You need to first identify where the debate is happening, and then you need to tell me what this world looks like what this place where you know the debate is happening looks like. So I'm going to say, okay, panel, the world we're talking about today is the world which is rapidly evolving in such a way that there is generational differences, right? This is to say that children don't often agree with what their parents say. They think they're uncool, and they find other influences in life, such as friends, and then they get into peer pressure and they start doing bad things. We think then holding parents responsible for the child's wrongdoing is essentially bad, because if you look at the kind of world we're living in, then parents are not the primary stakeholders who you're influenced by, like it used to be the case in the past when you did not have the internet to connect to the rest of the world with, so on and so on and so forth. So explaining where the debate is happening is to explain what the world looks like today, right? Like, what does the world look like for parents? What does the world look like for children? What is their relation like? This brings me to the third thing you need to explain in framing. Who are the stakeholders in your debate? For example, Middlemarch is a book about Dorothea, about Celia, about so many other people. But if it's a book about Dorothea and Celia, how are they related? That needs to be told as well. So Dorothea and Celia are sisters. The book explains that. That is how you're also supposed to explain. Just 1 second. You're also supposed to explain that the debate is about these stakeholders, like the government, or like in this motion, the debate is about uh, the parents, the children, the teachers, friends, other influence groups. All of them get impacted in this debate. What is the relationship between the parent and child then is also important to explain. Panel, we think that parent-child relationship these days is not very healthy, or it is healthy, however you want to put it, and that we think children are closer to their friends. You can also put it the other way around. You can also say that parents these days are very careful and they like to make their children friends, and they're also more liberal and open-minded. So children don't mind being friends with their parents. That's something you can say, depending on what you need to prove. Is everybody clear with what framing or setup means then in the first speech? Thumbs up quick. Okay, I don't have a lot of attentive listeners in this call then. 16 people listening. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
How long should we do this setup? Because
Yeah,
it's
I
a
was
3 minute speech.
that's a good question. I'll tell you how to distribute your time. I'll first go over the entrails of a speech, and then I'll go over how much time you should be ideally dedicating to this. So first, let me just allow me to cover this. And then I'll go into the timestamps. So the thing is that, yeah, you start with the setup. The next thing you find yourself doing is argumentation. Argumentation, I want you to remember this simple rule, uh, which I bet your other trainers have also told you if you're not new to debate. So it's a claim followed by an analysis, followed by an example, and that's it. So claim is an opinion, right? Like, I could say that dogs are better pets than cats. It's a claim. You could have one claim, I could have another. No point debating that, because none of us are explaining why our claim matters. So claim is just like this superficial opinion that we throw around. Now a claim needs to immediately be backed by analysis if you want to make it like marketable in the debate. So you give an analysis. I think dogs are better than cats because dogs are, I don't know, more tameable. Cats just get into get in like weird spaces in your house. It's very difficult to extricate them from those places. Cats look cunning to me. I don't know. And then I'm sorry if I'm offending any cat lovers. I'm just like making random arguments. So those kinds of things. Now that is analysis. All right. So, and this is very poor analysis because the topic I have picked for myself is for some reason very poor. But you understand, right? When you're saying something, when you're making a claim, you also analyze it. You give reasons. And reasons are mostly built on why am I saying what I'm saying, what is the relevance of what I'm saying, so on and so forth. And then there has to be an example. Example doesn't always have to be factual. It doesn't always have to be, hey, the so and so journal says so and so about the number of women going to college or dropping out. Like 20% of the women drop out from college in rural areas of India. Those kinds of things aren't examples in the format. Logical examples, which are hypothetical, also work. So you can make up an example which is realistic, right? So I can say that women in India don't have enough rights just yet, or feminism in India is not strong enough right now, even without the help of an internet example, by just saying that panel, look at the kind, India is a developing country. Literacy rates are not very high. And education is one means of informing yourself of your rights. And when education itself is not there, because we are telling you literacy rates are not high, because identity politics, etc., takes up most of our time and governments don't invest enough in education, then we can also by extension say that feminism is not widespread enough because there's no means of spreading it through education. Now that's an example of why something is kaput and why it is like that, right? So examples can be of various types. Please do not uh constrain yourself by constantly having to conjure numbers or like recall figures from random surveys and journals you read. Not needed, doesn't go on to reflect your uh logical ability, so it's not needed as such. The structure of an argument, I hope, then is clear. This means that you are supposed to do setup in the first speech, followed by argument. Argument should follow structure. Structure is claim, analysis, example. Example need not be statistical, factual always. It can also be hypothetical, but it has to be realistic. Summarization, all right? The next thing you find yourself doing is, if you want to do this, is you guess what the other side will say and try to rebut it in the first speech itself. And now I'm talking about like God speeches, like exemplary speeches. You can easily choose not to do this. You can choose to not guess what the other side will say. You can choose to wait for them to say it and then rebut it and reply. But if you're a very fast speaker, if you've been debating for too long, this is for experienced debaters. Please try to be very preemptive, because preemption and guessing what the other side will say and like nipping it in the bud gives you better speaker scores, right? So if you want to win on a big margin of victory, you're welcome to do that using preemption. That's the structure of a constructive speech in general. Coming back to the question somebody just asked me then, how should you divide your time? I think framing should not take up more than a minute, but if it takes a minute, it's fine. It can be it can go up to it can last for a minute, or it can be less than that. More than that will get you in a problem. Don't blame me for that. Framing is entirely up to you. How much of framing is important framing in this debate? If there is, I mean, of course, you need to define children in a motion where children's wrongdoing is being concerned. You can't sidestep it. But I can define children in like 10 pages. I can write a dissertation on it. But I can also define children in like 4 simple layers. See how I do characterization, and it normally generally works. I'm not so bad in framing. Is like this. Panel, 4 things about children as stakeholders that you need to know. First, children don't make all the decisions by themselves. But secondly, that children more often than not have a lot of influence groups these days, and not just parents. But thirdly, children are more influenced by their peers than they are by their parents for so and so reasons. And lastly, we think holding the parents accountable for their wrongdoing. I mean, children need to be made responsible or like introspective, which doesn't happen if you blame their parents. I have defined children in like many ways in 4 simple sentences, hasn't taken me more than 20 seconds. So that's how you can define. It's really no big deal. Your framing should end in 1 minute, ideally, then, out of the 3 minutes that you get. In the last 2 minutes, you push one argument per minute. All right. One argument per minute should give you a good speech. So framing for the first minute, one argument for the second, one argument for the third, and then concluding remarks will be given 20 seconds extra anyway. But conclusion can also happen in like the 3 minutes. So like an argument can last for like 40-45 seconds as well. That much you will have to arrange for yourself. I can't be too particular about defining timestamps, because I don't want you to just like make it a noose around your neck. Just like be flexible with it. What I'm saying need not be set in stone. Are we good so far? Give me a thumbs up or ask questions.
I had a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask how many reasons should we give to support a claim?
Okay, that's a good question, but okay. See, analysis is a very big thing. I would, if I were generally teaching you guys, I'd probably take 5 sessions to explain analysis. But to generally, like in short, to give you a concise view of it, your analysis should end only when you don't have, I mean, when your last sentence does not permit a question. So, okay, children have various influence groups. Why? Ask yourself why every time you're putting a layer in there, right? So I ask myself why. The answer is they have very influence groups because there's the access to internet. Why? Why do we have access to internet? They have access to internet because, of course, we're talking about a society where, I mean, mobile data is too easy to acquire and everybody has a mobile phone regardless of the socioeconomic positioning, even in countries like India. And why? Because children won't do without like phones. It's also required for education, so parents are likely to buy them those phones. So taking away phones from them is not a possibility. So like that, you keep analyzing and keep asking yourself why, and stop only when that why is answered in its entirety and there's no more whys to answer. Does that answer your question, Rudraj?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Right? So I can't say that, okay, give 4 reasons, because what if these 4 reasons are all irrelevant? So layers is decided by how many times you can ask yourself why. Cool.
Yeah, I had a question.
Apoorv, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to ask like about the example part in an argument. Like, so sometimes you can give like very extreme examples, so that about like the children parents can't be blamed. So lots of children lots of children that had troubled childhoods turned out to be like like not that great adults, like Hitler, for example. But I've been told that giving extreme examples is not a great idea. So can you just explain what type of examples you should give?
No, what kind of examples isn't a great idea? I'm so sorry. I lost you there. You'll have to rephrase your question and make it shorter. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I was just saying that, like what type of examples exactly should we give? Because sometimes if you give extreme examples, like I've been told that you shouldn't give very extreme examples. So, like what type of examples exactly should
Okay,
you give?
extreme. Yeah, all right. I'll solve this problem of extremism for you. Now, extreme examples, as in, it could mean a lot of things, but you should definitely, this is called likelihood analysis. Okay, again, something that would require an entire hour to be explained. But likelihood analysis is when you make a claim and you rethink, am I making any sense when I think about the actual execution of this thing in the real world? The only litmus test you need to have for your example is it relatable? Would I buy it? Is this likely to happen? All right. So if you're saying people in the slums of Dharavi don't have water to drink, and that's why they have constant confrontations, and that's why they are then incremented with high rates of crime, then that makes sense, right? Because you can imagine the slum of Dharavi as like the most horrendous place in terms of how much scarcity people have to go through there. But if you start saying that, oh, people, even upper middle class families have this problem of water scarcity, sure, they might, because we're running out of water slowly. But they're definitely not in a position where they're like confronting each other, where they're fighting each other, where they're killing each other because water has become so important. Do you understand? So likelihood has to be weighed all the time. Approve.
Yeah.
Am I making
Yeah.
sense? All right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions, guys?
I have a question about the reply speech.
Yeah, but why?
So
I
you
mean, I'm going to
mentioned,
cover replies right now, so don't ask me any question.
1 minute. Should we add the sources from where we have taken the statistics if we are ever adding it just to make our argument better?
I mean, nobody's going to ask you for the source, but statistics, I promise you, statistics don't have as much importance as logic does.
Okay.
I mean, if you just keep giving statistics, no, that reduces your chance of winning, is what I'm saying. Because stats don't prove anything. You could say that, hey, non-violence was good when Gandhi used it, but that doesn't prove that non-violence is good right now as well, right? So facts don't matter. Like, just because Gandhi did something, it doesn't mean that it's going to benefit now as well, because Gandhi did it in his own time and place. So those references don't matter as much as what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to like change your way of thinking. If you want to add stats, please do. But I'm also giving you a new sort of an insight.
No, like for example, 15% of women drop out from this and that colleges in
Right.
India. So for example, this is the statistic. I'm just speaking it to like make my argument better. And should I give the place or the source where I've taken it from, because someone might ask in the reply speech?
No, you don't have to mention the source. The source. The judges don't care about the source. It only happens in MUNs and other public forum format. It doesn't happen in one versus. I mean, the kind of one versus one we're following.
Okay, thank you.
But just to clarify, statistics don't give you additional marks, right?
Not at all. No.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions, guys? Assuming there are none. Reply speeches. All right. The first thing I need you to know about reply speech is that this is your only opportunity to engage with your op. This means that, I mean, all of us, if we are debaters, if we've just like gotten into debating, you will have this itch to respond immediately. You will also have this itch to clarify to the judge through the chat box about what you were trying to say and how your op is misrepresenting you. Don't do that. The decorum of the house says that the only time in which you can rebut the other side effectively and in a way where people are listening to you is through the reply speech, which means that putting something in the chat box is the most offensive thing you can do to the judge because you're trying to sway their opinion then. And like raising your hand or cross questioning somebody or interrupting them in their speech is clear ground for disqualification. So that also you're not doing. The only thing that you can do then is you every time a rebuttal comes to you, you write down on a paper so that you don't forget it. And in the 3 minutes of your reply, you strategically share all your rebuttals. That's the way to go, please. Don't breach the decorum of the room because you're into passionate rebutting. Do strategic rebutting, not passionate rebutting. That's one. Second, your reply speech is ideally mostly impromptu, simply because you can't respond to something before it has been said. So you have to wait for the other side to make their first speech and then make the reply. It will happen on the spot. But don't beat yourself up for it. Like simple. I have some responses, I string them together, it gives me a reply speech. Don't think about it as a speech, think about it as a conversation, right? Then it becomes less intimidating. All of us know how to speak in English. Even right now, you're not writing down your questions before you ask me them. Go into the debate room with the same kind of confidence and don't like have this urgency of writing speeches. Trust me when I say this, and I genuinely want to espouse for this cause. When I myself was in school, the way I used to debate was I used to be very fretful and I used to write stuff. That stopped me from growing. The best thing you can do for yourself as a debater or a thinker is to not write down your speeches, just have bullet points. And you will end up making fun, like, I mean, making a fool of yourself sometimes, but eventually it grows on you and you speak exceptionally well because you made that effort in the first place. So your reliance on writing an entire speech is something that we aspire to break through this reply speech concept. You're not going to write it beforehand. You're going to just have the points and deliver. So to prepare your reply speech a little in advance, the third point. Now here I'm not being hypocritical where I say, okay, you should be impromptu, but I'm also giving you advice on how to do it in advance. I'm just helping people who are doing it for the first time. And I don't want to pressurize you by saying that, hey, you should have it on your tips. If you have to write a speech, if you cannot conceptualize delivering a speech impromptu just yet, fair, I understand your apprehension. For that, you can try to do some guesswork. What will the other side say? How can I rebut it in advance? Now, they might not actually say that, but because you're trying to rebut it, I mean, because you're already thinking about it, you're probably going to be able to rebut it better. So the thing is that you need to really be mindful of this idea of preemption if you want a reply speech to be prepared in advance. Preemption, I think I explained this yesterday as well, is when you when you think about what the other side will run, or when you put yourself in other person's shoes and think about what you would have run had you been that other side, all right? And the next thing is, the last thing in fact, is that your reply speech is as important as your first speech. Why am I saying it? Because new debaters, even I myself, when I was one, tend to make this mistake of thinking that reply speech is secondary to the main argumentation that you're putting across. I think that's a bad conception, because there's two things, right? There's pushing positive matter from your side, and there's running a negative case. When you run a negative case, you're trying to deconstruct what they're saying. When you're running a positive case, you're trying to make your case all the more strong so that they can't deconstruct yours. While your first speech helps you do the construction, the second speech helps you do the deconstruction. So none of them have like a hierarchy in terms of one being more important than the other. The second speech, if anything, is more important because you're responding to your opponent in this speech. So, and the kind of responses that you need to give, and this is very important for even the experienced debaters, I must say, is that you can't do selective rebutting. All right. You can't say, hey, okay, Nitiksha is running this argument. This one seems claimable. I'll rebut this. I won't rebut that. You have to rebut literally everything. The second thing that you need to do is not rebut using rhetorics. I see a lot of people saying that, so the opposition argument is completely senseless. So I'm going to choose not to rebut it and not waste my time. Well, your loss. Because you thought that this argument was assertive, you thought that this argument was lame, and you thought that the other side was stupid in pushing that argument. But actually, none of that was true. That argument was probably being bought by the adjudicator whilst you were undermining it. Any argument is a good argument. Please rebut it with a certain sense of modesty. I see a lot of people not rebutting stuff because they think it's obviously wrong. Always remember, your judge is an average reasonable voter. They will buy anything if you're able to analyze it and push it well. Which means that you might think you're too learned, but if the other side is able to explain their point better and you don't agree with that point, then the judge just might buy that point. You need to rebut everything. Long story short, all right? All right, I'm open to questions now. I'm done with what the reply speech means and what you're supposed to do.
Can I ask a few questions?
One at a
No,
time.
sorry,
To give
one
everybody-
question
Yeah,
from
one.
the.
Okay.
Can we, first of all, can we add extra points in our rebuttal speech if we are the proposition?
Okay, yeah, you bring me to a very important point I missed. Yes. So in your reply speech, nobody is going to credit you with any positive matter, any new argument. Simple reason and logic for that being, we're not sadists here. But the thing is that if you put something in your reply speech, it's not going to, I mean, the other side doesn't have a fair opportunity to rebut what you're saying in your reply speech, right? This is to say that, okay, if who's on my screen right now? Yeah, if Abira was saying that, okay, Abira does a prop speech, I do an op speech, Abira does a reply speech, I do a reply speech. So and if in my reply speech I make a new argument, it's unfair to Abira because Abira hasn't had the chance to rebut it even once, right? This means that you're trying to win without contestation. So your reply speech, positive matter will not be accepted. I've given you the logic for it. Please don't fight your judges about that. And the next thing that you need to know is that reply speeches are only for rebuttals. And one more important thing, some people from this room and in the tournament in general are going to run new arguments in their rebuttals, regardless of what I'm saying. Don't say that, oh, they won even when they were running new arguments in their reply speech. It's not a metric on which you will lose your debate. Maybe you ran a new argument in your reply speech. Even I end up doing that sometime in the tournament. It doesn't always mean that you're going to lose. It just means that this argument is not going to be hers. So don't say that, oh, I should win because they were running new argument in the reply. All right. Abira, does that answer?
Yes, thank you.
Excuse me.
Miss, I've got a question.
Yes, Vivan.
In your reply speech, you mentioned I think the maximum time you can speak is for 3 minutes, but what is the minimum?
Well, there's no minimum time limit that's set. You
Okay.
can speak for like 1 minute if you want, but
And ma'am, in your main speech, like, are you allowed to preempt over there, or is it only in the reply speech?
yeah, like I said, yeah, preemption is good in the main speech, but if you don't have the
Yeah.
time to do it, don't do it. Don't chew, like bite more than you can chew.
But it's also appreciated in the final speech.
What, preemption?
Yeah.
No, but how are you going to preempt in the final speech? You already
Miss,
heard what-
considering I'm proposition and they will speak after me, only then.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
Fine.
So like you're trying to preempt the reply. Right? If you're
Yes.
reply, yeah, okay, yeah, perfect.
Excuse me.
No, now I'm going to acknowledge people because quite a few have questions and I want to give everybody a fair chance. Arjun, what's your question?
So I had like two, but the main one was like in our speeches, does it matter how slow or fast we talk as long as we're audible, or
Not
like
at all.
is there
Not at
also
all.
points for how stylish you are?
No, stylish doesn't matter at all. That's
Okay,
public
cool.
speaking, guys. So
Yeah.
manner matters, okay? And I'll tell you what manner includes. That side is upcoming. But manner does not matter to an extent where like how your gesticulation matters or your like gesticulation doesn't matter. Where your hands are, nobody cares. Like if you're making those gestures, nobody cares.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to be articulate in the sense that you even if you're fumbling, if you've stopped completely for 30 seconds, it doesn't mean that you're losing. Please, it's fine. That's why I'm telling you to not write down your speeches. But manner matters in other ways. I'm going to tell you how. But yeah, going fast, slow, nobody is too concerned with that.
And
Oh,
also in terms of etiquette, if we say something like opposition said this, we don't buy it. Here's why. Is that like acceptable, or do you have to
so
be more respectful?
respectfully disagree, sure. You can say, okay, our op said this and we do not buy the claim. But if you were to go in, like, of course, you rebut the argument, not the person. As simple as that. You attack the argument, not the person. As long as you're fulfilling that metric, you're not going to have any equity problems.
Okay, sure.
Cool. All right, Rupashi, what might your question be?
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, in a PDC kind of layout, the whip does something known as clash, like these were clash identification. So, is it advisable to do clash identification in reply speeches?
Well, that's a good question, but it's also a question that might confuse new debaters. Guys, don't listen to this question or the answer if you're new. This is really not important. If you don't understand what clashes are, this is only like very advanced stuff. So clash is when there is a common point on which both of the sides have talked about, right? About which both the sides have talked. So like in this motion on how this house regrets holding parents accountable for juvenile wrongdoings, the clash will be parents' role in the wrongdoing, right? Because prop and op both will talk about it. That's clashes. So now what Rupashi is asking is that, is it okay for us to discuss clashes in reply? Well, it's ideal to do that if you know how to. Because reply is all about this is what they said, this is what I'm saying, and this is why I think we win this clash over them. That's one way of responding to things. That's a good way of responding to things, not an issue.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. But hey, it's just a method. There are various other ways of doing replies. So if you don't understand clashes, please don't be fretful about it. All right. Agastya, what's your question? Okay. Assuming you're not around. Devna. Okay, I want people to rename themselves before I acknowledge them. I don't understand this username, so with your grades, only then am I going to acknowledge you. It's unfair to other people who listen. Ria, what's your question?
Is there any negative marking for exceeding the time limit or finishing before or both our speeches?
Well, okay, good question. So basically, what the judges do, and I'm serious about this, I'm not joking. The judges literally don't write down anything you say after 3. I judge at a lot of places, I do the same. Because if I consider something that you're saying after 3 minutes and 20 seconds, then I'm being unfair to the other side, and the other side will hold me accountable for it. So I'm going to discard everything you say after your time limit. So you're not down marked, but you're not being heard, you're not heard either. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Vihan. Question.
Actually, ma'am, how many maximum arguments can be made in one whole debate?
Well, ideally, what is humanly possible for you to do is 2 arguments because you have 3 minutes. So 2 in 3 minutes is a lot. That's enough.
Okay, and if we want to add one more, is it okay, or just two? Like, is two compulsory, or
2 is not compulsory. You can also run one very, very good argument and rebuttals. That alone can win you the debate. Quality over quantity always.
okay? Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome. Deepal, if I'm pronouncing it right, I'm sorry if I'm not.
Yes, ma'am, you're pronouncing it right.
Yeah.
Ma'am, my question was, in a reply chat, if we are to give a positive argument in order to justify one of the arguments put forward by the opposition party, are we allowed to do that?
Sorry, could you come again with your question?
Yes, in a reply speech, if we are trying to if you're trying to justify one of the arguments by an example, but it kind of converts into a positive argument just to satisfy our own point, is it allowed?
I think you're saying if I start with an example and it ends up becoming an argument, is that allowed, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
I mean, see, for this, you might be bound on method because method needs you to first give claim, then analysis, then example. And now you're turning the entire structure around, right? Which might
Okay.
come with the cost of like your method will be unclear to the judge because example will make better sense when it comes after analysis, not when it comes before.
Okay. So we can do it after.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
Devna,
you.
you're welcome. Have I pronounced it right? No. Okay, there might be some problem. Apurv, I think I've responded. Okay, lower your hands if you've gotten your answers. Abira, what's your question?
Can we use first person pronouns like he or she in a debate?
Yeah, fair. Okay.
Okay, and can
No,
we?
you should say prop speaker one like that.
Acha,
Parliamentary
okay.
language.
Okay. Or we can use they maybe.
They, yeah, sure.
Yeah, and can we ask questions in our reply speeches to the opposition or the person who's speaking against us?
No, when will they respond to those? No. You
Okay.
can't. Apurv,
Yeah, miss, so I want to ask, like, is
just
it
once
only,
lower your hand, Abira, and everybody else whose question is answered. It's confusing. Yeah. Thanks. Apurv, yes.
is it only the job of the proposition to define or like frame the debate, or can like opposition also suggest their own definition if prop's definition is like too constricting or does not
Good
allow?
question. Good question. Yeah, you can contest framing. You can say, okay, we don't agree with this part of the framing, but you don't always have to oppose it. Sometimes you agree with it, and that's fine.
Yeah. Also, miss, I want to ask that, like, in reply speeches, if, like, so for example, if OP has rebutted am prop and OP has rebutted one of my arguments, can I like reinforce that argument in reply speeches, like rebuild my case, or not at all?
Yeah, you're expected to, in fact.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Agastya, what is your question?
My question was answered. Thank you. It was like
Lower
just
your
answered
hand.
just now before this.
Right. Aradhana?
We have 20 seconds grace time, right? After the
Yeah,
after
15 to 20, depending on your judge. Yeah.
Okay.
Lower your hand, Rupashi.
I might have another doubt. If that's
Lower your
okay.
hands, guys. All right. If your doubts are clear, oh, you have another doubt, is what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, all right, then yes.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, is techniques. So basically, usually I do MUNs in PDC, and this is my first time doing a one-on-one. So, are the components like proving that the burden was not satisfied, or what you do in like oral, like self-adjudication, is that allowed in one-to-one format,
See,
or does that consume marks?
no,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think that gives you an unfair advantage over people who are trying it for the first time. So burden and everything. See, guys, don't use WSDC jargons in 1 versus 1 because you might want try doing that. There's two disadvantages to that. One, you're not being fair to other people who have not practiced that format. But secondly, you're also wasting your time because that jargon is probably not understood by a judge who doesn't judge WSDC formats. So I think we need to keep it simplistic. So weighing, impacting, and so many other things I could teach you. I'm not teaching them here simply because they're not relevant to this format. You don't have enough time to flesh stuff out using those mechanisms.
Okay, ma'am. And ma'am, also you talked about giving analysis, and I've often received this feedback that my arguments have logic, but somehow they cannot mark it because I have not connected them well, or I have not given proper analysis. So how can I work on that? If there are any sources or anything else you can recommend?
I think I'll answer this. I mean, I think this is something that requires like an explanation, which might confuse others. So you can probably like stay back after the call. I mean, I'll answer your question, all right?
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, just very specific question. So Kabir, yes.
Hi. I just had a question. Could I use personal examples if I have some related to the motion, or I just base them purely with logic and I can't use any experiences or personal examples?
Personal example. You can't say that, hey, it happened to me one time in school, so I think this is what happens to most of the people. I see a lot of people doing that.
Okay.
Personal examples are not cool.
But even if like I try to make a point or support my main point with that, does that work or not even that?
Why do you want to be personal then? If you want to say that this happened to me at school, you might as well say that this happens to most of the people at school. Then it has better credibility, right?
Right.
When you
Okay.
say it's my lived experience, then you are lowering its credibility. You are saying it's only your lived experience. It might be very different. Then your
But if
opponent will say that it's his lived experience, but not mine, and you'll butcher.
But if I try to say, for example, if it happened to everyone in school, then wouldn't I need statistics? And if I use statistics, that actually doesn't.
See, there's a difference between saying it happens to everyone and most people. See, if you want to make a claim about a community, it better be happening to most of the people, right? So when I say that backward classes are discriminated against, I can't say it when like one person is discriminated against. I can only say it when most of the people are discriminated against in that community, right? Now there might be a lot of Hindus also. I mean just any religious minority or any majority groups or like any like white people. I'm sure there is at least one white person who's bullied really badly in their school or college in America.
Right.
But by their example, we can't say that all the white people are bullied, right? So you need to prove that the thing is happening to most of the people to be able to make that claim. That
Okay.
doesn't happen from the personal example.
Coming back the same thing, if I really want to prove a certain point, and you're saying if statistics doesn't pay a lot of like credit, how would I prove that point using logic?
See, okay. You don't need statistics for that, right? Then you need to create a logical thread. I'll tell you how. So I want to prove that most people in America are discriminated against. You can use precedent. You can say that historically, you know that you don't have any stats right now, but you know precedent, right? That black people in America were enslaved. After abolition was removed, there was segregationist movements that were started. They were not allowed to drink from like public. I mean, they were not allowed to use public spaces, etc. And then they were discriminated against. And now we've come to microaggressions, etc. At workplaces. We think then black people are still discriminated against. The only difference is that it's becoming subtler by the day. So now I'm giving you an analysis that explains that most people are still discriminated against. But I'm not using stats. I'm just giving you a logical thread to follow, that this is what history looked like. And if I link the things the right way, I think it still continues to happen.
But then that boils down to an example, right?
Yeah.
So we can use examples, but not personal.
You can use it. Yeah. You can. That's what I started with, right? You can use hypothetical examples, but not personal.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Cool. All right.
Can
You're
we
welcome.
just say like something in the news, like the Black Lives Matter thing that happened? Can we
Yeah,
connect
Black
it with
Lives
it?
Matter, you can refer to it. Why not? If you already have some knowledge, you use it. Okay. I'm not trying to say that you discard all of your knowledge because I'm not listening.
Okay.
But this should be organically your repository. It shouldn't be internet with like
Yeah.
stats over stats
Okay.
over stats.
Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Yuvraj,
Excuse me, man.
just 1 second. I'm coming back to you, Yuvraj. Yuvraj, what's your question?
My question was, can we have a rebuttal on a point which was made after a person exceeded his time limit?
Which was made after what?
A person means the opposition or the proposition exceeded their time limit.
No, you don't. I mean, people are always finishing or concluding their argument in the extended time. They can't make like a new argument and end it in 20 seconds. So you should rebut it because it's like some part of it already came in the protected time.
Okay.
Cool. Devna, yes.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, actually, I wanted to ask, like, can you give some advice on giving a good start and a good ending to the speeches we give during the debate? Because earlier I have received feedbacks like you're the middle portion, the body of your speeches are good, but you're not able to give a good ending and a good starting to your speech.
Yeah, so okay, that's what I said. Start with a build up, right? Like a setup, like in novels. That's what I explained. And conclude with like a summarization. Final 3 things that we proved in this debate. 1, 2, 3. That's why we should win.
Could you repeat for the starting? Your voice is very low.
I think you'll have to watch the recording. I explained framing in great detail, right? With like the example of a novel. So you watch the recording and you'll understand how it start. Like
Okay.
give an impetus.
And
to
one more thing was like if we're not able to counter the person, so are we allowed to use chits, or are we just allowed to have like
none of that. No,
self stamp?
no.
Uh,
That is
sorry to
against.
interrupt. I'm sorry to interrupt, but where do we find these recordings? Because I am not aware. Sorry.
No, we send it on the WhatsApp group.
Oh, okay, cool.
All right. Yes, Devna, have I answered your questions?
Could you answer that question again?
Which one?
How are we supposed to counter our if we're not able to defend ourselves, and how are we supposed to counter if the point is against us and we're not able to defend ourselves?
I am unable to understand what you're trying to get at. Rephrase. Can you reframe your question?
If we're unable to defend our reasons, what are we supposed to do in that case?
Why
That's
would you be
like,
unable to? There's always a rebuttal to any given argument. I mean, you give me any argument, I'll be able to rebut it. So if you think hard enough, even if you can't say that the other person is wrong, you can at least prove that it's not. I mean, that something else is happening on your side, which is better than the harm that they're pushing on you. Those kinds of things.
thank you, Miss.
All right. Rudransh.
Yeah, could you please give me an example of rebuttal, like with reference to any debatable topic?
The example of a rebuttal.
Yeah.
Okay, simple. So if I say that parents should not be blamed for their children's wrongdoing, because they are not, because children meet a lot of other people who influence them, then a rebuttal to that could be that, okay, there are a lot of people who influence your child, but then the child comes back to you and you are the moral grounding, and you have had the privilege of giving them the moral code of conduct, giving them the formative development, and they come back home to you every day. So it's your responsibility to just like offset the bad influence that they might gather in a day's time when they're outside of your influence. So that's a rebuttal.
So technically, in rebuttal, what we do is we are taking the words of the opposing team, and we are going against that particular words that they have stated.
Yeah, rebuttal is a response.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, from now on, guys, we're going to keep a question short because otherwise we're going to go way over time. I need to also explain the metrics. So, Rochishnu, what is your question? I'm sorry if I mispronounced this.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask if the opponent says something controversial, can we ask in our reply speech, could we ask him or her for evidence of their claims? That what's the
No.
evidence for their claims?
Got it. If somebody makes a controversial claim, if somebody is not making sense to you, they're probably not making sense to the judge as well. So please be patient and trust the judge. You can't do counter questioning, etc., or looking for evidence is not permitted.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Kushagra?
Ma'am, I wanted to ask, like, what is the ideal time for the proposition to ask rebuttals?
Ask rebuttals or share rebuttals?
Rebut.
3 minutes. Reply speech. You can use the entire reply speech to rebut.
Okay.
Okay, Devesh, what's the question?
Are we allowed to include model?
No. Not for
Okay.
this. Lower your hands, guys. If your answers, if you've got your answers. Arjun?
Oh, for the introduction, can we start with something like side proposition lives in a world where this.
Yes.
Okay.
Aradhana, lower your hands, please.
Yeah. Does case splits give us points?
Sorry, what?
Does case splits give us points, like saying that in my speech I'm going to cover this, this, this?
See, you'd be wasting your time. In an 8-minute long speech, it makes sense, but in 3 minutes, don't give the summary at the start. Give it towards the end in the last 20 seconds.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, guys, that's it. I can't take more questions. I'll take them tomorrow now. I need to redo the metrics. So this I've explained. Argument is claim analysis example. Quickly covering this, okay? Because over time. Now, if you have any classes, please go. I don't want to eat into your time. You'll have the recording, okay? If you don't, please just stay and understand this. Marking rubric for the format is simple. Matter is what is your argument, right? Like, what are you saying? Is it making any sense logically speaking? Secondly, how is it relevant? Like, you could be making a very relevant argument, but it might not. I mean, sorry, you could be making a very good argument, but it might not be relevant to the debate, the topic at hand, or the motion at hand. So, how do you prove your relevance in the debate? That's important. Thirdly, yeah, just that. Just I think matter you can understand that much. So, are you speaking from your side when you're for, or have you switched to against those kinds of mistakes? A burden fulfillment is knowing what to do, like knowing which side you're from and what you're supposed to prove by the end of the debate, right? That gives you relevance in the debate. The second metric is manner. I think this pertains to some questions that were coming to me in terms of decorum, what can we do, etiquettes. This is what you're supposed to do for manner. So eye contact, as in you shouldn't be reading off a doc, right? You can refer to it, but if you're constantly looking at the doc, and some people think that, oh, I'm using a Google Doc, it doesn't seem like I'm reading. Judges are very smart, they can tell. So that leads to down marking. Engagement with it in your reply speeches. This means that your reply speech cannot be a repetition of your first speech. If the judge sees that the judge tries to understand if you're being charitable to the other side, if you're understanding what they're saying, or if you're only living in a world where you push a case and you reiterate it, but you don't engage with what the other side is saying. And then other things like don't ask interjections because they're not allowed. Don't give clarifications in chat box because that's not allowed. So that's all of that is manner. Now, method is like somebody asked me, can I give the example first and follow it up with an analysis? No. Method is structure, right? If you're making an argument, complete it and then move to the next one. Some people make claim 1, do half analysis, move to claim 2, do half analysis, come back to the first arguments example, and never end up getting to the second arguments example. So method is just a structure. You might have very good content, but if you're not structuring it well, it's a waste of time. So method out of 10, you get marked for like how structured you are, how well-timed you are, how efficient you are with the usage of time. So matter, manner, method, 10 plus 10 plus 10 gives you a 30. You're going to be marked out of 30 in every round. It makes a 90 for the 3 rounds. So your average will be found like based on these metrics. Is that understood?
What type of methods?
Yeah.
Dipankar, yes.
Yeah, I wanted to ask like what type of methods are needed?
Can you be a little louder, please? I don't know if there's a problem in my device or yours.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I was asking what type of specific methods are the best to engage in a rebuttal?
I mean, there's no method. So you can deny their claim when they are factually wrong, but when they're saying the right thing, then you can't keep denying them either. You need to accept that what they're saying is a possibility. And then you say, okay, if that harm exists on my side, then there are some harms that exist on your side as well. And that I think offsets it. Or you can say that, look, the harm on my side, I agree it exists, but it's smaller than the benefit that I accrue. So we are okay with the trade-off, trade-off where there is a small harm for a big benefit. Do you get it? Those kinds of rebuttals.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, the kind of questions you're asking, guys, require like at least 2-3 hours of explanation. So don't expect a very nuanced answer, but I'm trying to help as much as I can. Tanisha, yes.
Are questions helpful? Like questions about questions so if you are, for example, if you ask the opponent, would you rather support my argument and giving an explanation why? Does that help your argument or like your reply?
Like if you extend your existing argument.
Sure.
Yeah, it helps. It always helps. It just shouldn't be new. In your reply, you can extend your existing argument. It can't be new though. You can reiterate the same argument in different ways.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Agastya?
Yeah, so in our reply speech, let's say we want to rebuild our case. And that involves like introducing more logic or going more into depth about a point. Would that be counted as new matter in the debate,
No.
and
If you're
would
not
we be
saying
down
something
marked?
obviously, like if you're setting it up with a new analysis, or I mean, you know what's new. Like sometimes people try to act smart and say, okay, this is not new, this is extension. But extension is you explaining the same thing in different words. It's not, if you're pushing something new, then yeah, that doesn't get counted. It depends on, I mean, you can use different words to make it more impactful. You can add new examples to simplify your point, but you can't give new argument.
Okay. And are POIs allowed during the
No,
debate?
no.
No? Okay. Thank you.
Arjun?
Yeah. My question was, can our like rebuttals, because those will have to be new, so can they be integrated with our like rebuilding as well?
Integrated, yes, good. Yeah, if you have the skill to do that. Sometimes your rebuttals are integrated into your arguments. That's a good way of saving time, but it also takes time to learn that. So yeah, if you can do it, well and good.
Yeah.
Rudransh?
Oh yeah. So should we also in our arguments, should we also include the impact that is happening on the world because of our claims and reasons?
Yeah, I'm not explaining impacts here because again, that's advanced debating. But if you want to include impacts, you can. Now, impacts is a huge thing in and of itself. If you have the time for to do it, well and good. If you don't, then these are additional things, right?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Abhira?
I just wanted to ask, can you give us some sources from where we can see some basic debates? Like you said that we can't see WSTC or we can't refer to WSTC because it's not
Okay, no,
relevant to
listen.
this.
You can refer to WSDC, but the only thing you need to keep in mind while you're referring to WSDC debates is that my speech has to be shorter, so it will be less explanatory. Simple. I am telling you not to refer to WSDC for the subsequent, like if you listen to a whip speech in WSDC, then it doesn't make sense because you don't have the space to do what a whip speaker can do in WSDC. But if you listen to first, second speeches, then it's fine. I mean, I'm okay with that.
Okay, can you just tell us some other debating competitions from which we can refer?
I'm
Just to
not
see
sure
how
if
this.
they've recorded and it's on the internet. I mean, your guess is as good as mine, so go on YouTube, explore.
Okay.
All right, I think we're going to have to end this now. Too long a session, but good. I mean, I think we covered quite a lot of things. Tomorrow we'll be practicing mostly. So case preps, I'll have a motion. I'll get you to respond. I'll only read the first 5-10 responses. So you have to be quick with your responses. So be more proactive tomorrow. And that's how we're going to do the practice, how as much as we can with like 50 of us in a room. But yeah, I think it's like for today, this is good. I'll call it a day. So I'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you. Good night. Bye.
Thank you.
If you guys want to stay back because you had a question, it's okay. Rupashi, you had a question, right?
Yes, ma'am.
How about you text me with it? I mean, I know I'm being slightly exacting, but I need to be somewhere. Can you text me that question and I'll come back to you on that?
Yeah, ma'am. No problem.
Right. So just do that for me.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right. You're welcome. I'll see you all tomorrow.